Welcome to Transit Unplugged. I'm Paul Comfort. Great to be with you on another edition of the world's leading transit executive podcast, and you've joined us for a good one. This is our year-end podcast, some of the best interviews of 2021, and they represent a cross-section of guests from across North America, Europe, the Middle East, and Asia. Our guests on today's episode include clips from interviews with Anne Graham, CEO of the National Transport Authority of Ireland, Ahmed Hashem Barosian, CEO of the Roads and Transport Authority of Dubai, Leslie Richards, CEO of the Southeast Pennsylvania Transportation Authority in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Nat Ford, CEO of the Jacksonville Transit Authority in Florida, and Jeremy Yap, Deputy Chief Executive, Public Transport Policy and Planning, the Land Transport Authority in Singapore, and Chair of the UITP Organizing Authorities Division. I think you'll enjoy all 5 of these clips as they do bring you a good cross-section of some of the best interviews we've had in 2021 that received real responses from your audience. And thank you for staying with us. We now are in our 5th year. Hopefully you can visit us on our website, transitunplugged.com, to see all that we have to offer now with social media and our brand new television show coming up your way with the Transit Unplugged TV coming on YouTube from Las Vegas. Enjoy today's episode of Transit Unplugged.
So we contract and we're responsible for the provision of subsidised public transport services. So that's where the state is paying a subsidy for the provision of services. And they would include rail services, so the rail network throughout the island, all our bus services, and we have light rail services in Dublin only. So all those are procured by ourselves, and we're in contract with those operators. A lot of the services, bus services and the heavy rail services, are provided by a state-owned company. So still would provide the majority of the services in Ireland. There are commercially operated services as well that we license. So their services and their bus services in the main or in complete their bus services, and they're operated without state subsidy. So they represent about 10% of public transport journeys across the state. So we have a combination of fully licensed commercial services with no state subsidy, and then we step in and provide services where there's an obligation, there's an economic need and a social need to provide services, but they're not financially sustainable. And we provide subsidy for those. We've also been working to introduce some competition into the subsidised market, because when we started off, it was fully provided by the state operators, and so now we've introduced some competition into that market. So those are fully tendered on the open market, and we've now got around 10 to 15% of our bus services are provided by privately owned commercial companies under contract to ourselves. Demand response is primarily on our rural transport services, and it started off our rural transport as a very much community-led transport provision. So it was local community groups getting together to seek funding to provide demand responsive service, primarily serving those communities, very isolated communities, particularly older people, and to bring them and connect them back into their local communities. So that's primarily where our demand responsive services started. So they've been operating for over 10 years now, and we just brought them into the whole public transport family. And so they form a very important part of our transport family. And we are trying to ensure that once they could link somebody that's living in a very isolated rural area into a local town, and they can then transfer to another service, which brings them to a larger town or to a city. So that's where we call our rural transport services local link, because it's very important to connect local people to their local centres.
So tell me about ridership and that kind of stuff pre-COVID, now that we're in COVID. How's that impacted you, those kind of things?
Yeah, so we had in 2019 a very successful year. So we grew our public transport journeys by 9%, which is quite incredible in one year. Yeah. So now we did invest in additional services, and that's what we're continuing to do, is to identify where there are gaps in our services and to increase those services. But 9% growth was phenomenal. And it brought us up to around 290 million journeys per year, which was incredible. But naturally, the impact of COVID has been very significant, as it has been across the world. So what we've seen by year end of 2020 are compared to 2019, we saw a reduction of 50% in our public transport journeys. Yeah, lots going on. So there's the previous government produced a national development plan of the infrastructure development for the next 10 years. And for the first time in any national development plan in Ireland, we saw more money being set aside for the development of public transport versus the roads infrastructure. So in our earlier years, we invested, as a country, we invested a lot in our motorway infrastructure, our roads infrastructure, which the bus system obviously benefits from and lots of people benefit from. But now there's much more focus on investment in sustainable transport. So about 8.6 billion euros was set aside for sustainable transport infrastructure. So we've got three big programs that form part of that. The first one is Metrolink, which is a underground metro, about 19 kilometres of metro, which will connect Swords, which is a town in the north of Dublin City, to our airport and into the city centre. And at the moment, we've gone through quite a significant amount of public consultation. It's been actually delivered by a sister agency, which is Transport Infrastructure Ireland, and they work on light rail infrastructure and motorway roads, national roads infrastructure. So again, we set the strategy, we're the funders, and they'll do the day-to-day kind of delivery of that, with us overseeing it and obviously working very closely with us. So that at the moment is, we're just completing the design. We're finalising the business case, which has to go to government because we have to present to government. They have to see that there is a business case for this, get approval for us to then take it into the planning stage. So we have a statutory planning framework that we have to go through as well. And that's where things can sometimes get tricky, as you can imagine, because the public have a right to object to what we're planning to do. And this will go through an oral hearing and there's a process involved in that. And particularly when there's compulsory purchase of property, you have to go through this process in Ireland before you're in a position to do that. So that will be considered a mega project from Ireland's perspective anyway, and it'll be the first underground metro. Awesome. And then we've another programme to continue to electrify our rail line, our heavy rail system, our commuter rail system in Dublin. We call that the DART Plus programme, and DART is the name we give to our current electric system, which is about 50 kilometres of electric railway line. And we want to extend that by another 100 kilometres of electric rail line. So it's really electrifying the existing line so that it can take trains. The first kind of phase of that is actually purchase of fleet. So we decided with our partners, Darren, who are our operator, will deliver this infrastructure as well, to procure battery electric and electric fleet. So what we wanted to do was provide the capacity as early as possible in the programme without necessarily having the overhead lines to operate the electric fleet. So that's why we're going for battery electric in the initial phases, so that we can actually increase the capacity of the system, because we were definitely constrained in terms of the numbers of people that we could carry versus the demand. We hope to place an order, or Irish Rail hope to place an order in this quarter, or maybe certainly early 2021, for a significant amount of rail fleet. And then they will move to bring through the planning process again all the electrification and all the infrastructure works associated with the electrification. And then finally on the bus system, because of the size of our country and even our cities and how dispersed our population is, even within the city, we don't have very dense city environments. So it means the bus is the workhorse for our public transport system, and always will be, even in Dublin. So it'll still carry the vast majority of our public transport journeys. So we decided to kind of develop a programme called Bus Connects, which is really about looking at every aspect of the bus system and improving it. So we looked at the network. Is the network fit for purpose for the city and the way the city is developed and the way people are changing in terms of their journeys? And we engaged actually Jared Walker, who you may know. He came to work with us on our network and to just relook at our network fresh. And the other key part of the program is actually improving the bus priority on our city streets, because at the moment the bus shares its journey with car traffic for about 70% of its journey. So naturally enough, as the city gets congested, the bus gets held up and the journey times aren't as efficient as they could be. So we've undertaken a very significant public consultation on a series of interventions across all the radial routes into the city, where we want to provide a full bus priority in each direction and a segregated cycle lane in each direction, and as well as place for car as well, and walking as well. So given that in Dublin our streets aren't that wide, this has meant that we are, for the first time, looking at compulsory purchasing property in order to provide for the bus system or the cycling system.
But it's exciting to see the investment from the federal level here in the US and a lot of places in Canada and others. Public transportation operating dollars have largely been a local, state and local responsibility. But I think federal governments around the world are realizing, like yours has, that we have to invest in what we want our future to look like. We can't just let things happen. We have to take intentional action, and if we want a cleaner, better environment and better mobility for our people, I think you're setting an example for the rest of the world, Anne.
I'm delighted to hear that. Delighted. Well, we're very excited about it. We believe that it also makes financial sense and economic sense as well, because the cost of car congestion, if it's let increase year on year, is very significant. Like, we estimated that if we did nothing, that the cost just in Dublin will be 2 billion euros per year of congestion.
Wasted productivity kind of thing?
Wasted time, journey times, all that. So there's huge economic benefit, and particularly in the bus system, because the cost of the infrastructure is quite low. It's really a roads project. It's really about relining your streets, basically. It's not huge more investment compared to a light rail or heavy rail system. So you can provide a lot by just with relatively low levels of investment.
And innovation is a very important part of the city. It's always been about innovation. It's always been about leadership that's looking forward, has the foresight to think beyond what normal people, if you like, can see. And really, it's about pushing the limits, pushing the boundaries in everything we do, whether it's in the buildings that we build, in the way that we develop our city, and even the transport systems that we provide. So, for example, we operate currently the longest driverless metro system in the whole world. Our metro stations, unlike what is normally you see around Europe, the Far East, etc., are built more like 5-star hotels, if you like, so very fancy transport and mobility hubs that really encourage people to use the different mobility services. I think when we were established as the RTA, we just completed about 15 years of being in business, the Roads and Transport Authority. When we started off, only 6% of trips in Dubai were conducted through public transport, whereas the majority of trips were done through private vehicles. In 15 years, that 6% has gone up to about 17 to 18%. It's still quite, when you compare us to some other cities where public transport is if you like, competing very heavily with private cars, it still looks low. But if you look at 6% to 17, 18% in 15 years, in a city where the road infrastructure is extremely strong, we have actually been awarded the best road infrastructure worldwide 4 years in a row. So really the city is very much a car-oriented city. So we are competing against a very difficult opponent, if you like, in terms of private cars. We have been focusing very much on shared mobility solutions and increasing the different mobility options people have in Dubai. I think our philosophy is the more options you provide for people, the more chance you have of people, if you like, leaving their cars. Maybe they're still going to own cars, but they're going to do less trips with those cars. So they're going to reconsider every time they make a trip to say, why would I take out my car? Why don't I use RTA's mobility services? There are so many options available. What this pandemic has also, I think, opened everybody's eyes towards is to say, I think these rigid mobility solutions like metro systems and buses, normal buses, if you like, are very expensive to operate. The ridership patterns are shifting all the time, and it's very difficult to keep up with that. So I think a good alternative for that, and we've realized that in Dubai, is that on-demand services is going to be the next big thing. We obviously have e-hailing services for both limo and taxi services in Dubai. But we feel that a bus on-demand service is also the next thing that's going to allow us to operate buses in a more personalized way for customers. So fine-tuning, if you like, the service to the demand shifts, to demand patterns of customers. At the same time, for us as an operator, it's a lot more efficient because you have a lot less dead mileage, a lot less fuel consumption, because you're actually understanding what the demand patterns are and responding to it in a more dynamic way. So that's been a new addition. We've also, in the last year or so, introduced a bike sharing service in the city with a partner, Careem. Careem, of course, is the biggest e-hail in the Middle East. Started in Dubai as a startup. So we've introduced with Careem a bike sharing service in Dubai, which is covering many parts of the city. We continue to expand our bike dedicated bike lanes around the city to make it a very safe and affordable service for citizens. And only very recently, and when I say very recently, I mean about 2 weeks ago, we started a shared scooter service as well in the city. So we now have 5 partners. It's a 1-year pilot. Like many cities around the world, we are very excited about the potential of scooters, but we're also a little bit worried about the safety aspect. I think a lot of cities in the US, as well as Europe, have experimented with scooters. Some have been more successful than others. So we've looked at the different models, the different lessons learned by different cities. And we felt the best way to go with scooters is to start a trial in 5 different areas in the city with 5 different operators, a 1-year trial for us and the operators to learn. And then after 1 year, hopefully we'll formalize it across the different parts of the city. So this is the approach we've taken. So I think our philosophy is there's no one size fits all when it comes to mobility solutions. Not every solution works for every city in the world. Some solutions work everywhere, but they need to be tweaked. I think different models, different business models, different partnerships, in order to accommodate the obvious, if you like, distinctions that are there always from one city to another. So the tram has been one of the newest additions to the mobility landscape in Dubai. It's only about 6 years old, I believe. It's a good complement to the metro, so it links to the metro system. You can hop off the metro and hop onto a tram very seamlessly. Of course, in Dubai, when we introduced the Dubai Metro, we also introduced a unified ticketing system in the city as well. So it's called NOL, N-O-L, and it's very easy to pronounce in both Arabic and English. But the objective of NOL is really seamless transportation. So with that card, you can actually then hop on and hop off to any transport mode. You can hop onto the metro, hop off and hop onto a bus or to the tram and any other mode of transport as well. It's also, even all of our new mobility solutions, we're insisting always that the ticketing system of Dubai is always allows you to use any mobility system, whether it's existing or a new mobility system in the city. We complement that also with an app that is our journey planner for the city as well. So again, any new mobility mode in Dubai, we insist that it always has to be integrated into the journey planning app in the city. So we're trying to really, as we expand our mobility services from metro to tram to buses to bus on demand to soft mobility solutions, it always needs to be seamless. It always needs to be integrated. And hopefully we make it as easy as possible for people to plan their journey using all of the different mobility services available. It's not always easy because you have different partners, different operators. They normally come with their own apps, with their own offerings. But we always insist that it needs to be as seamless as possible for the customer. I think with diversity, sometimes comes complexity as well. And that's a challenge that we always have. We want to be diverse. We want to provide as many options as possible, but we don't want to confuse customers. We don't want to make it difficult. We don't want the customer to have 20 apps on their phone in order for them to be able to move around the city.
Tell me about how you integrate with taxi cabs, because I understand they're really part of your whole solution, right?
Sure. Yeah, well we actually have, the way we operate taxis in Dubai is like a franchise service, if you like. So we have 7 franchisees, taxi operators, who are basically privately owned, most of them, and they operate under, so we're a regulator, if you like, rather than an operator. However, I think the model that we deploy in Dubai, especially with the RTA, most of our services now we don't operate anymore. We still operate public transport buses, but I think post-Expo, we're hoping to move away from operating and outsource that as well. The metro is outsourced, the buses are franchised, etc. So we're really moving away from operation and more into a role of a regulator, organizer, responsible for quality assurance of the service. Now, in some cities around the world, and I've seen this, I don't really like this model. The regulator is normally saying, listen, taxis are operated by private companies. It's their business. They manage the service. We're really not that involved. For us in Dubai, it's a little bit different. We always want to make sure that we have control of the quality of the service. So it's very important that even if we're not operating a service, we don't shirk away from the responsibility that the service is still the quality of the service is still our responsibility, even if we don't operate it ourselves. Now, this means that we have about, as I said, 7 franchisees that operate taxis. We have 11,000 taxis, 23,000 taxi drivers in the city. And if we're not going to depend on technology and cutting-edge technology to manage the quality of the service, it's going to be impossible. Since you mentioned Matthew, I think Matthew is a little bit sick and tired of having meetings with me where I'm always pushing him to say, listen, what's next? Technology innovation, what's coming next in the taxi field? We need to improve. We need to have better control over the taxi service. We need to, even though we're not in the taxi, in the cab, where the driver and the passenger are there together, we need to know what's happening there. We need our cameras to be telling us, we need AI to be basically telling us what's being done properly, what's going wrong in taxis for us to be able to take action. So the technology that Trapeze deploys in taxis is very advanced. We believe it's also one of the most advanced systems worldwide. We have telematic devices in all our taxis. We have cameras in taxis which allow us to always be aware of what's going on with any taxi trip. There are certain, if you like, mis or bad practices that taxi drivers deploy anywhere in the world, not just in Dubai. We like to use the technology to manage things like black trips, to manage things like disputes between the customers and the taxi drivers. And I think the fact that also we have introduced in the last couple of years, also through a partnership with the private sector, we've introduced e-hailing to taxis in Dubai. I think that has helped the taxi industry as well, because in most cities around the world, when e-hailers like Uber came in, it affected the business of taxis. It really, brought down their revenues. It brought unwanted competition. For cities, it was great because for customers, they had choice, but the taxi industry really suffered in many cities around the world. For us, I think we embraced e-hailing and we allowed the Ubers and Careems to provide the e-hailing service in the limo sector. Now, in Dubai, the limo sector means, if you like, a premium taxi service or an upper-class taxi service. And we then introduced, in RTA, in partnership with the taxi companies, we introduced e-hailing to taxis. And really that helped the taxis compete with the limo, if you like. So it actually allowed them to flourish rather than having them suffer through e-hailing services. So, as I said, we embrace innovation and we welcome innovation and we want people to bring innovative ideas to the city and try it out here. But also because we're fast in decision making. I think that's a big competitive advantage for our city as well. We are able to make quick decisions for changes in regulation, changes in policies that allow us to embrace innovation. Because with innovation, sometimes you have clashes between innovative ideas and what the laws and regulations say. And rather than fight the innovative ideas, we actually fight the laws, if you like, and fight the regulations and try to bend and tweak regulations in order for us to be able to bring innovation to our city. So I think that is going to continue. We are going to see, the world is always going to see new innovative ideas in terms of mobility and shared mobility and soft mobility. And we want Dubai always to be the place for companies to think, listen, let me go and talk to the government in Dubai, because I think they will be the first government that will welcome us and allow us to experiment and to try our solutions. So that's one area. I think the other area for us is autonomous. I think we believe in autonomous mobility. We believe it's going to be the future for several reasons. I think when you talk to any of the leading companies worldwide that are working on autonomous mobilities or autonomous cars in general and transportation, I think they will tell you that the biggest driver for them is saving lives. And over 90%, of course, 95% of accidents happen because of human error. We lose over 1 million lives worldwide to road accidents. It's sad. And I think if you talk to any company, they will say that saving lives is their main priority. Now, if you talk to any government also, I'm sure saving lives from road accidents is also a priority. So that's, I think, where the private sector and government come together when it comes to autonomous transport. There are, of course, other benefits. I think the biggest drivers for us, of course, is safety and saving lives. It's also, hopefully, when you take the driver component out of any transportation mode, be it a bus or a taxi, you're actually saving a lot of money because the driver is quite an expensive cost element. And then hopefully that saving of money can be passed on to the customer. So really, it's about making transportation and mobility cheaper for people, and then it becomes more inclusive. And speaking of inclusivity, again, it's about people who today have difficulty having access to mobility systems, like people of older age, the elderly, kids, for example. Really, it's opening the door for people, for mobility to be all inclusive and to bring everyone into the picture, if you like. So these are the drivers.
most of our listeners are in the transportation industry, and most have aspirations to move up. And so they like seeing other career paths. So tell us about your career path, Leslie.
Sure. So I think like a lot of people who are in transportation, I fell into the transportation industry, was always interested in working with communities. I was always fascinated by how they operated, what made some communities work better than others. Always interested in quality of life issues. And so as an undergrad, I studied urban studies and economics. I then went on to get a master's in regional planning, where I got very interested in environmental issues, particularly water and air issues. I worked for the EPA for a little while in their water division, as well as their air quality division. It was there that I got introduced to emissions and some of the air quality work related to transportation. I then worked for our city planning commission here in Philadelphia for a little bit, the Central Philadelphia Development Corporation. And then I left the workforce for 8 years. I was a stay-at-home mom. I have 3 children. And for 8 years, I actually worked very hard. I just didn't get paid very well when it comes to money. Got paid in other ways, but not when it comes to a salary. Then I re-entered the workforce, working part-time for a while. Worked for an environmental engineering firm, and it just so, as luck would have it, I interviewed with them, and they had just won the largest transportation project in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and that was the I-95 interchange turnpike connection. And that was the last remaining link of I-95 from Florida to Maine. And it happened to be in Ben Salem Township, Pennsylvania. And so we wanted to build that last interchange, very large project, over $2 billion project. And they needed someone to lead their public involvement and help with acquisition and right away acquisition, as well as property acquisition issues. And so I was happy to be back at work and jumped in. And it was really that project that showed me how much transportation can add to the economic development of a region, can hurt or help neighborhoods, can really impact people at their business levels, at their the communities they choose to raise their families in. Really enjoyed those conversations, and then built up a public involvement department for them there, managed many other projects, worked for a civil engineering firm for a little bit. And at the same time, while I was home as a stay-at-home mom, I got involved with my community, and I helped with our first township day. I always say my first transportation project was running the pony rides at our township day. And I did pretty well. And just really enjoyed being part of the community that way.
You got bucked off the horse?
Everyone was safe. Everyone was safe. All of the horse extras were cleaned up properly off of the baseball field that we used. It was very successful. Lots of smiling young faces in my neighborhood. But from there, I was asked to join our Park and Rec board. I ended up chairing our board when we did our first master plan of all the parks, really looking at them as a network. Then I joined our planning commission. And then, to my surprise, was asked if I'd be interested in running for local office, our township supervisor position. And while I had always presented to the supervisors, I really had never had an interest in being on the board of supervisors. After going back and forth for a while, which is pretty typical, I decided to run. And at that time, there's 5 supervisors. At that time, 3 were running. We had the chance to make a majority. No surprise, since I served under a Democratic governor, I'm a Democrat. And I live in a majority Republican township. And we thought that if we could take all 3 seats, we would win the majority for the first time in our township in a very, very long time. So we knocked on a lot of doors. We spoke to our neighbors, and to our surprise, as well as the townships, we won all 3 seats. And so that was very exciting.
Feels good, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's nice to be in the majority. That's what I have to say. Yeah. And so we did a lot of interesting things with my background. We did a lot of stormwater projects, open space preservation, as well as economic development, obviously roads and bridges. And as we move forward, we needed to do some farmland preservation. And I went in front of the county board of commissioners, and I thought, wow, there's a job where you get to make all of these, important decisions that impact our quality of life. You get paid for it, and it's during the day because the local elected stuff. I'm working part-time at the environmental engineering firm. I have the 3 young kids at home. My husband's been traveling a lot for his work, and you fit it in where you can. And then I thought, well, this could be an interesting opportunity. So again, mimicking my township role, lived in a majority at the time Republican county. This would be the first time that we could take over the majority. So, my profile was interesting to the county party of what we had done and how we did it. Long story short, we won, and we were the first Democratic majority in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, in over 140 years. And so that was very exciting. What I did not know about politics was that that's kind of a big deal in Pennsylvania, the 3rd largest county, over 800,000 residents. And so when you do things, you get the attention that Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and Montgomery County get. And so drew some attention. I got to go to the White House. I also was one of the few women in elected office at that time in the area. And I met a man, a businessman in Central PA, Tom Wolf, at the time. And we started a relationship. He was very supportive of what we were doing. I let him know how we were consolidating departments, how we were moving forward, the things that we own, went back to our core mission of what a county should do, making difficult decisions. He runs for governor and looking to fill his support network and his cabinet in our conversations. Obviously thrilled that I got to be his Secretary of Transportation. I got to be the first female to fulfill that role as well. And so we got to move forward on a lot of diversity and inclusion initiatives, as well as making sure that we had a transportation system, for the 21st century, and move forward how we worked with our communities, and PennDOT Connects, and changed a few things there. So that was wonderful. I also got to be the first female chair of the Turnpike Commission here in Pennsylvania. And that's where I really got to know the chairman of the SEPTA board, who is a Pennsylvania Turnpike commissioner. We worked through a lot of very difficult issues, contentious issues at the Turnpike, financial difficult issues. And I'm always embarrassed to say I didn't see the opportunity, but back in April of 2019, after a board meeting, he asked if I'd be interested in coming back to my home, which is southeastern Pennsylvania, and leading the 6th largest transit agency in the country. And so we started to talk, and I realized the opportunities to work with our communities on the ground to really help, particularly communities of color, disadvantaged neighborhoods, making sure that they had opportunities, making sure that we could get them to opportunities, to jobs, help their quality of life. It really seemed like a wonderful opportunity for me, one I was excited about, one that, my past experience would be really helpful. And like I said, I was just embarrassed I didn't see that opportunity ahead of me, but I'm glad that he did. And so here I am.
Off, be sitting in your brand new building that really you haven't really had a chance to fully occupy, right?
Yes. In fact, we completed construction last year this time, and there was a plan for a major celebration, and unfortunately, the pandemic put that to rest. But we did move forward in May of last year and went forward with opening up the building and opening up the transit operation. But we're still in a posture where half of our employees are working remotely from home and half are working here in the office building, socially distanced. Mm-hmm. But we're very proud of this facility. It had been on the books for a number of years, the Jacksonville Regional Transportation Center at La Villa. And what we've built here is a true Grand Central Station for Northeast Florida. Across the street, I think you saw where we have connectivity to Greyhound, Megabus, and Red Coach, which operate intercity services. And then we have our fixed route bus service here, along with the Skyway, which is our automated people mover integrated into the facility. We now operate regional commuter bus services since the last time we spoke. So we're connected to Nassau County, which is the Amelia Island area. We run express bus service to St. Johns County, which is the city of St. Augustine area. And then we also operate all of Clay County services. So we have become more of a regional operator since we last talked, and a number of micro transit ready ride services we provide in the community. So very proud of, and our Bus Rapid Transit, first close flyer Bus Rapid Transit network connects to this facility. And we have one final leg of that we're building this year, which is the Orange Line, which will connect from this facility down southwest area of Jacksonville, connecting with the Orange Park Mall. Yeah, exactly. So our origins, our DNA is really road and bridge building in our community. And so a number of iconic bridges as well as roads were actually built by the Jacksonville Expressway Authority, which was created in 1955. We're a state independent quasi-state authority. And so 1955, the Jacksonville Expressway Authority. In the 1970s, you had a number of privately held bus companies that were going out of business, going bankrupt, and we were asked to step in the 70s, take responsibility for those bus operations. And so now we are truly multimodal in that we do road and bridge building, and we have a number of road projects that are underway right now. And then we operate, I would say, a mid-sized public transit agency. So a wide spectrum of transportation modes that we oversee: sidewalk building, road building, bike lanes, you name it. We pretty much do all of it, along with our parking operations.
I think a lot of people know your background, but for those who don't, tell us a little about your background, how you ended up here.
So for those who don't know me, I actually started out my career with New York City Transit as a train operator, a second generation transit person. My father had rose to the ranks of being the chief operating officer for New York Transit, and I sort of followed in his footsteps, became eventually a superintendent, a number of promotions, superintendent in transit operations. Then left, went to work for BART for about 5 years as one of their assistant chief transportation officers, and then got recruited to MARTA as their senior VP of operations, eventually appointed to chief executive officer in 2000. And then San Francisco MTA came a-calling, and I started there in 2006 as their CEO, and then landed here in Jacksonville in December 2012. And so I've had a chance to work around the country, and I'm just so excited about the work that I've been a part of over the years in these different communities. We really took it as an opportunity to look at the JTA and recognize that there was going to be a new normal coming out of this pandemic. And we decided to take a look inward and really look at the services we currently provide, but more importantly, what are the services we need to provide going into the future? We are, as public transportation agencies, we touch so many facets in terms of our community. And so I think sometimes we don't recognize our power, our influence, and our impact. And so today is an example of that as it relates to this COVID-19 pandemic. And we all know, I think in our case, 850 square miles of our service here in the city of Jacksonville, not counting the other counties, but 850 square miles, a combination of rural, suburban, as well as urban. We know on a daily basis there are members of our community that don't have access to education, they don't have access to healthcare opportunities, and also there's issues in terms of job opportunities. And we know that on a daily basis. So when this pandemic occurred, we really looked at how could the JTA, with its assets, its planning, its intellectual acumen, its talent, its facilities, how could we lean in and actually support our community and thereby continue to create the support for the JTA we need for our overall mission? What can we do to help this community to continue to show the JTA's value and worth? And that's where the partnership came up to create these mobile buses, that vaccination buses that are set up like mobile doctor's offices.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say it was rather easy. It was somewhat complicated to do that, but it continues to show our value to this community. It's that same mindset that we apply to a lot of the issues that our elected leaders are facing here. They see the JTA not just as a bus operation or just as the operator or builder of road projects, but they see us as part of the problem solving for issues on homelessness, on issues as it relates to poverty in certain communities. We are seen as that beacon. I also would add that when we look at the public transport, we look at the way we are designed as the JTA, we have impacts in terms of economic vitality, sidewalk accessibility, bike lane accessibility. We have an impact on pedestrian fatalities and the safety of bicyclists. So the list goes on and on and on. I think we are best prepared and situated to be holistic transportation service providers, and we should not limit ourselves and stay in one lane.
Tell us a little bit about what you're doing with autonomous vehicles. I'll be going out and visiting that later, but you've been one of the leaders there too. Where do you envision the role of autonomous vehicles going over the next 5 to 10 years?
We believe autonomous vehicle technology is a question of when and not if. And I think, as you can see over the last 5 years since we started with the concept, there's been a great deal of advancement. You will see our test facility out there at Armsdale, the Armsdale Test and Learn facility, and you will see how advanced the technology has become. We've tested over 7 vehicles to this date since that time frame, and we actually own one vehicle, the Perrone Robotics EV Star vehicle, which is a conventional, what you would see, a paratransit type vehicle that has a autonomous vehicle kit actually installed on it. And the reason being is because many of the autonomous vehicles that you currently see, the Ollie 2.0, the Easy Mile, some of these vehicles have not gone through the NHTSA approval process to operate in mixed traffic. So as a plan B, we're going to have a vehicle that is roadworthy, but already automated and kitted out. We believe that this technology is, again, not a question of if, it's a question of when. We need to make the smart decisions at the right time. Our test and learn facility has afforded us the ability as the JTA to actually go back to OEMs, and now they're working in partnership with us because our test facility has actually identified what we call the Golden 20, which are 20 requirements that we feel is necessary for an autonomous vehicle to operate in a public transit environment. And so you'll hear about that later today when you go to our test facility. And that has advanced the JTA's staff and team to be, I think, on the cutting edge in terms of this technology. Well, you kind of let one out of the bag. We are working on vertical.
Really?
Yeah. So we have meetings set up. We've met with a couple of vertical takeoff companies. When you look at particularly Jacksonville, we have International Airport. You have the world-renowned Mayo Clinic. Mayo Clinic entertains or takes care of customers from around the globe.
Okay.
And so Jacksonville is a medical vacation. I don't want to say
I know what you mean, though.
Yeah, you know what I mean. But it is a medical destination for people from around the globe. We have an MD Anderson Cancer Center here that opened up a couple of years ago. And so between 3 major world-class facilities, UF Health at Shands is another facility, the ability to land in the airport and then possibly take a air taxi to Mayo's campus or to MD Anderson or UF Shands is a reality to explore. It is an opportunity to explore. And so we are working in that space with the airport and with a number of AV companies, because when they're talking about these robo-taxis, the air taxis, they're actually unmanned in a lot of cases.
That's right.
So we're examining.
Today, we're excited to bring you one of the world's leading transit executives, Jeremy Yap. Jeremy is the Deputy Chief Executive of Public Transport Policy and Planning for the Land Transport Authority in Singapore. He's also chair of the Organizing Authorities Division, UITP, and vice president of the UITP Executive Board. Jeremy, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Paul. Glad to be on Transit Unplugged.
Yes, great to have you with us. This is an honor for me. As you know, we were just both on a big UITP webinar last night with almost 600 people from around the world, and I was fascinated by what you're doing there in Singapore. I can't wait to dig in today and unpack it all.
Just to give you some sense of the pace of development, we are about 230 kilometers of rail right now, metro, and in about 2030 or thereabouts, we'll be pushing to about 360 kilometers. And that means, Paul, in practical terms, we build 1 kilometer of tunnel every month. And every 2 months, we pop up an MRT station or a metro station somewhere underground on top. And that goes on all the way until 2030. That's the pace of construction that we have to undergo in order to develop and expand a more comprehensive network, which is the backbone of the transport in Singapore are crucial. So just to give you an idea, we have spent over 60 billion recently on the expansion of new lines, on renewal, big renewal projects in signaling, in comms, in power and track circuit. All these things that will deliver high reliability in the metro for our commuters. In fact, I would, if you allow me to give a little bit of a boast in Singapore and this system, and we have developed what we call 1 million, we've surpassed the 1 million mark as a system in the metro of what we call mean kilometers before failure, meaning runs 1,000, 1 million NKBF before a commuter gets to experience failure. And that is the how we want to deliver a high quality public transport for our commuters, because Singaporeans deserve that. So we thought this is something that we'll put resources behind and we manage it properly so that we can keep that reliability very high. Just like if you turn on the tap, you expect water to flow. In the same way, transport is like that. If you view reliability in those terms, then as good as turning on a tap, it flows. It doesn't, stop suddenly in the middle of nowhere. So that's what we aspire to do.
That's great. Let's walk through the modes now that you operate there, the rail, the bus, and kind of give us a little detail about each one. How many vehicles, what your passengers are, kind of walk us through each of the modes and describe them to us.
Okay, so the rail is the backbone. I already described it's about 230 kilometers. So we carry about quite close to about 3.4 million trips each day before COVID. Right. And then the bus side of the house carries about 3.6 million. Yeah.
Let me ask you to go even a little bit in more depth, what we call inside baseball here in America.
Sure.
So what type of rail are we talking about here? Is this, diesel? Is it electric? Is it third rail? Is it catenary wire? Kind of walk us through.
We have a mix. We have most of our rail are underground, except for the first line. Parts of it is elevated, but large parts of it is also underground. We have a policy to ground our metro systems, or at least the ones with larger vehicles, 4-car, 6-car trains, we call them. Okay. So these are all electric runs. They are all, in fact, many of them are driverless. So we already have autonomous thinking very early in our history. So driverless trains already. So we have about 6-7 lines now already going. We're pushing beyond, as I've said, expanding the rail network very aggressively. Yeah, and on the bus side of the house, we have about 14 packages, right? Okay. So we have tendered about 4 or 5 packages, from the incumbents. That we had 2 original bus companies who were operating here, but now Go Ahead, you're familiar with Go Ahead, they operate packages here, as well as Tower Transit, right? They are in town as well. So we have 4 very involved, very capable bus operators. And so we have 14 packages, and Tower Transit operates 2 of them. Go Ahead operates 1, and between the 2 original incumbents, there's a division, and SBST, one of the larger incumbents, operates about 9 packages. So it's a contestable market, and that one is really what we call gross cost market. The metro operates on what we call net cost, risk sharing kind of arrangement. The interesting thing, Paul, is that we've seen some leveling of the peak. And that is pleasing to us, because it does mean that I don't have to chase after the peak and inject services just to meet the peak of the peaks, which is a very strain on resources, as you would know. And so that leveling is something that we've taken advantage of. It's something that we, it never wastes a good crisis, right, Paul? So as Winston Churchill said, make sure that when, COVID serves it up to you, you make sure that you shape it in the way that you like it. So when we saw the peak leveling, the off-peak rose. And so, we saw it rise a couple of percentage points. It was pleasing to see, so that even as the ridership recovers, it didn't recover in the same form. It recovered in a more distributed manner, and that was pleasing. And that's something that we seek to entrench and shape, because something that is positive, you want to shape it actively rather than just let it evolve.
Yes, that's happening all over the world, as you know, Jeremy. Is that transit agencies are taking this this crisis moment as an opportunity to reevaluate and reevaluate what services they're offering, focus on what is our core mission. Is our core mission just to basically be a commuter service, to run people in and out of the city at the AM and PM peak? Or is it to provide the mobility needs of everyone all day long? And I think a lot of folks are realizing it really is about improving the customer experience and opening mobility options to all of life's opportunities for everyone, not just going back and forth to work. Is that what you're seeing there?
Yes, Paul, and I couldn't agree with you more. I think a good mobility system needs to be not just integrated, but inclusive. Inclusive in the sense that you expand the options and the commuters are empowered by the choices, the options that they have. So land transport is very intricately interwoven with the land use planning process. So the urban design, the whole development process. We have an interagency platform which works very closely. We have a concept plan of land use together with the other sectors. Going out 40 years, we look ahead. Every 15 years, we do a midterm review, and we go through various scenarios, population scenarios, employment scenarios, track the flight path, not just on a planning level, but on an execution level, right? We make sure that the land use is tightly coupled with transport. So whether it's TOD, that's the practice here as well. I talked about integrated transport developments. That's a feature here where we couple land use very closely, the timing of parcels that are coming up, where are the population centers, and we guide the infrastructure development to where the catchment is. And that's so important, right? Because that's where people work and play and need to do and go about doing their daily business.
Thank you for listening to this special edition of Transit Unplugged In-Depth with a selection of some of our favorite episodes from 2021. And next week is our special end-of-the-year episode at Transit Unplugged. Paul and I and a few special guests talk about what transit's going to look like in 2022 and what we think some of the hottest trends and advancements are going to be next year. Now, as always, if you have a question, comment, or would like to be a guest on Transit Unplugged, feel free to email us anytime at info@transitunplugged.com. So until next week, ride safe and ride happy.